Hey, KB, and welcome to our story of the week. We've got a good one today, and you can see the cover of the story on your screen right now. Here it is. First, before we even look at that cover and talk about the title, let's talk about what type of story we are reading today. This is actually a non-fiction story. You should remember that non-fiction stories are about real things, okay, that happen in real life. This is a non-fiction story because it gives information about a real topic, okay? Now, you might be looking at this cover and thinking, Mr. Vesda, we learned that most nonfiction stories have photographs, and this is not a photograph. And you're right. Sometimes our nonfiction stories will have illustrations instead. But the story itself is still going to be about something real. Okay? Now, check out the cover. And this, you see a tree right here. It looks like a real tree with some squirrels and a bird up top, some grass on the bottom. And the title of our story is A Grand Old Tree. A Grand Old Tree. This story has an author. Her name is Mary Newell de Palma. She is the person who wrote the story, so we call her the author. And she's also the illustrator. She created the pictures for the story as well. So before we get into it, let's remember it's a nonfiction story, which means it's about something real. The title is A Grand Old Tree, and the author and illustrator is Mary Newell de Palma. Let's read to find out about the life of a tree. Okay, here we go. Just sit back and relax and listen to our story. Once there was a grand old tree. Now, we've been learning that the main idea of a story is what the story is mostly about. I know that I can tell by looking at the title and the cover and this page right here that the main idea of this book is going to be a grand old tree and what happens to it. So sometimes we can learn the main idea right away in our story. Let's keep going. Her roots sank deep into the earth. Her arms reached high into the sky. Okay, now sometimes we might have to go back and use the pictures to help us a little bit. It says her arms reach high into the sky. Do trees have arms? No, but if we look here, they have branches, and sometimes branches can look like arms. So the tree's roots are going deep below the ground, and her branches, like arms, are reaching into the sky. She was home to many creatures. Birds nested among her branches. Squirrels scurried through her leaves. Caterpillars and ladybugs crawled about. So sometimes nonfiction stories can include details to give me a deeper understanding of the topic. On these pages, the details tell about the creatures that live in the tree. We see real creatures from real trees, like squirrels and ladybugs and caterpillars and birds. These are all real things that live in real trees. The grand old tree flowered. Wow, look at that. This word flowered, we see it happening in the picture. The tree is growing its flowers. Looks very beautiful. It bore fruit. So look here. What is growing on the tree now? Is it still flowers? No, it's fruit. You can see the fruit, and you can see the squirrels chasing away with some of it. And sowed seeds. She had many children. Now, who are the tree's children? Let's talk about that for a second. Think about who the tree's children might be. Are the squirrels the tree's children? No, the tree's children are tiny seeds. We saw the seeds right here, and now we can see them sprouting. So these little sprouts are going to grow into trees one day, but right now we can call them the tree's children because the seeds came from the grand old tree. They changed the landscape for miles around, perhaps even farther than the old tree knew. Okay? This page shows us a key detail here. The tree's seeds traveled so far. Look how far they traveled. All of these trees grew from the seeds of the grand old tree, and they're growing close to the ocean. So they went for miles and miles. The grand old tree lived a long, long time. She basked in the sun, bathed in the rain, swayed in the breeze, and danced in the wind. She grew and shed. This page shows us that this tree lived a very, very long time. As she grew and got older, she went through many different seasons and changed over and over and over again. Many millions of leaves. At last, the grand old tree was very, very old. Her branches no longer swayed and danced, but cracked and snapped in the wind. So now we're starting to learn about how the tree is changing for one of the last times. The tree is getting older. Her branches don't sway and dance in the wind like they used to. Instead, they're starting to crack off. Finally, she fell, and snow gently covered her. Picture in your mind the grand old tree falling. What do you think it would sound like? The picture shows her animal friends all around her. Why do you think they are there? I wonder. It looks like they're all very concerned about the tree, maybe even a little worried about it. The old tree died. She no longer flowered, bore fruit, or sowed seeds. Now, these last few pages showed us another key detail, even though it's kind of a sad one for right now. And that key detail is that the old tree died. This is the end of the tree's life cycle, or the stages it goes through during its life. The tree starts as a seed, then it becomes a young tree. It continues to grow until it becomes the grand old tree that we saw in the story, and then finally the tree gets old and dies. That's one of our key details. But she was still home to many creatures. Raccoons nested in her trunk, centipedes crawled along her branches, and lichen grew on her bark. So, look at all the new creatures that are making the grand old tree their home. We don't see the birds and the squirrels anymore, but we do see raccoons and centipedes and lichen. The grand old tree slowly crumbled. She became part of the earth. Today, the roots of her grandchildren sink deep into this earth. Their arms reach high into the sky. They are home to many creatures, just like the grand old tree. So even though the grand old tree died, all of her children, which were the trees that grew from her seeds, are still living strong. And even after the grand old tree died, we still saw the tree serving a purpose. She was home to all these different creatures that we see here. And while she was being a home to them, all of the other trees that she helped create were doing their jobs as well. Thank you so much for listening to this story with us. I really like this story and I hope you enjoyed it too. We'll do much more with it at school together.